Good day, everyone. Today I'd like to assist you with your exam preparation for English Paper 1, which consists of comprehension and language. Now, there are many subsections here, and I'm going to focus on each subsection as we go along. Question 1 normally deals with the comprehension, and it consists of 30 marks. Here you are given 2 short extracts, and you are asked questions based on those extracts. That's normally questions 1 and 2. Then we go on to question 3, which is the summary. And here, a summary is out of 10 marks, which is question 3. Then we go on to visual literacy. And here we've got 2 subsections. The first one deals with the cartoon analysis, and the second question deals with advertisements. We'll go into greater detail later on. And then the final question there deals with language and editing skills. The total marks for this paper is 80, and the time that you have to complete this paper is 2 hours. Firstly, let us look at comprehension and how we are going to prepare to answer all the questions on comprehension. This can be a very daunting task, and you've got to apply your knowledge and skills in order to perform very well in this section. Let's look at it. I will give you a few tips as to how you should handle comprehension, and hopefully you will be able to utilize those tips. Firstly, let's look at comprehension. It says, comprehension skills are important life skills that need to be developed. So they're just not questions that you have in an examination and that's the end of it. It basically deals with life, as you will see from the next quotation that I'm going to refer to. Let's examine this quotation. You first learn to read, later you read to learn. What does it mean? Very simply, it tells you that in order to do well in comprehension, you've got to read avidly. However, if you have not done so, we will still provide you with certain tips and hints as to how you can perform well here. Comprehension means understanding. Therefore, a comprehension task tests your understanding of a particular text, passage, extract, or article. When answering the questions, you have to show that you understand what the text means. You must be able to answer the questions from the given passage. When it comes to comprehensions, one of the major reasons why learners don't do well is because they try to find the answers from the text in a word-for-word kind of way. Now, I'd like to encourage you to refrain from this practice simply because it means that you are actually rewriting what the writer has stated in the passage. Now, you've got to interpret that into your own words unless you are asked to quote or to find a fact from the passage. Otherwise, you have to restate whatever is written into your own words. And I think that would hold you in good stead. Let's go on. Let me give you a few tips for English Paper 1, language and comprehension. Now, questions are framed by examiners using different levels. We start off from the very simple and it goes to the more complex type of question. So right at the outset, you'll find a few questions that will cater for everyone. So you shouldn't get those wrong, especially the first 3 or 4 questions. Here's an example of a question that you could get right at the beginning. The question is, according to the text, what type of flower does the boy give the girl? That's the question. What answer are you expected to give? The answer is, the boy gives the girl a red rose. Now you'll see that this is written in a complete sentence, and so you will get, maybe if it's out of 2, you'll get 2 out of 2 for it. Now, let me show you how questions can differ. For example, there's the next question. What is the significance of his choice of flower? Now here you will notice it's not straightforward. You may not find this answer in the passage, but it depends on how you interpret this question. So you've got to interpret it into your own words. What kind of answer would we expect? His choice of flower is significant because a rose is commonly associated with love, and the color red symbolizes passion. So, through his choice of flower, he's telling her that he loves her. You won't find that answer in the text. It's something that you'd have to think about and come up with yourself. So you will notice, not everything is straightforward. The areas here where you will have to interpret the question based on your experiences and your understanding and your reading and your previous knowledge, that those aspects are crucial. Comprehension questions are not like literature questions. You'll notice that there is a difference. You are not supposed to give your own view or interpretation unless asked, like in the last question. You have to answer in such a way as to show that you understand the text. So that's the trick here, people. You've got to understand, show your understanding of the text. This is an example, this is an extract that I've taken from a past year paper. And I'd like to very briefly go through this extract. And we will look at certain phrases that you might not be aware of or would have come across previously. But when you're faced with that situation, you've got to handle it. And how do you handle it? There's no need to panic about it. You've got to handle it in a very calm, controlled manner. Let's look at this. If Mum freaked out every time a wasp came close to her family and Dad did a dance whenever he encountered anything with more than 4 legs, it's little wonder most of us grew up hating insects. Many believe that insects are harmful mobile bacteria delivery service equipped with sucking mouth parts. Household insecticide companies need to keep this dream alive, or they would not sell their products. Each year, people spray tons of dangerous chemicals into living spaces and their lungs to get rid of multi-legged visitors. But if truth be told, nearly all insects are harmless. Okay, you got to read, get an overview of the passage, of the entire passage, and try and figure out what is the message in this passage. What is it all about? What are the key ideas? What if there are certain words or phrases that might not be very commonly used, and so you might not have come across them? You've got to underline that, and you've got to try and figure out now, what would that mean in context? You could also try and figure out the tone of this passage. That's very important. The tone refers to the writer's attitude towards his subject matter. How does he feel about it? For example, if you look at it, let's look at the word freaked out. If Mum freaked out every time a wasp came close to her family. Now you'll see that the language is not totally formal. It's colloquial, it's slang. All right? So you've got to try and figure out the type of audience that this is directed to, the type of people that would read or would be interested in such an article. Would that type of language appeal to them? So writers focus on their audience, and the type of language that they use will be relevant in terms of the audience that would be reading such articles. And Dad did a dance whenever he encountered anything with more than 4 legs. Now, we're going to look at what the writer actually means here. And Dad did a dance. Okay, that can be interpreted in different ways. So here we've got the literal meaning, the actual meaning, and then we've got a deeper meaning, a figurative meaning, or it's an expression that is used. And in this case, it's more an expression that is used. It doesn't literally mean that Dad was dancing. And many believe that insects are harmful mobile bacteria delivery service. Let's look at the use of language there. A mobile bacteria delivery service equipped with sucking mouth parts. The type of language will tell you something about the writer's attitude towards the subject. Is the writer being totally serious here? Is he mocking? Is he teasing? And I think you would be able to identify that the writer is basically poking fun at his parents and their fear of insects. So you've got to interpret certain phrases and understand the tone of the passage and the writer's attitude towards his subject material, and that is crucial. Here are some tips when it comes to comprehension and how you should go about analyzing the comprehension. Firstly, you will read through the passage quickly to get the general idea of what the writer is saying. Then you will browse through the questions. After that, you would now read for meaning to get a deeper understanding of what the writer is saying. When you come across words and phrases that are not familiar to you, you should underline those words and phrases and try and identify the meaning of those words and phrases as they are used in a sentence. That is the trick to understanding unfamiliar words and phrases. The understanding of difficult words, it is impossible for you to understand the meanings of all the words used in a comprehension passage. It helps to try and figure out the meaning of a word by looking at the context. Now let's look at the word context, and you've got to understand what context means. The word context simply means how a word is used in a particular sentence, and that brings out the meaning of that word. So you've got to try to understand what it could mean as it is used in a specific sentence. The common problem in comprehension is that when learners do not understand a word or phrase, they do not answer the question based on that. Now, you've got to make an attempt, you've got to try. Write something that might be a little relevant to the question. If you leave it blank, it means that you've left yourself with no chance at all of getting any mark. But if you write something remotely linked to the question, there's a possibility that you could be rewarded with at least half a mark or even 1 mark sometimes. So don't leave anything unanswered. When you look at comprehension, look at the title. If you are given a title, look at the title because the title is relevant. It actually tells you what the passage is about. And there's a link between the title and the content. So you've got to try and familiarize yourself with the meaning of the title of the comprehension. It's also important to know about where could this extract be taken from. And that will give you an idea of the tone. I've spoken about tone earlier on in which it is written and about the audience that this is directed towards. Always make sure that you know what the source of the text is, from which magazine or paper the text was written. And you'll find right at the end of the comprehension passage, the text would be acknowledged. You would be told where the extract is taken from. For example, from the daily newspaper or from the Sunday Tribune or the Sunday Times, or which particular magazine it had been taken from. I focused on the word tone, and that is very, very important, simply because on most occasions, examiners focus on the word tone and set questions based on tone. Tone shows the feelings and attitude of the writer towards his or her subject matter. And I think that's quite simple, and you should be able to figure out the tone. All right, tone may be angry, maybe apologetic, sympathetic, humorous, arrogant, mocking, etc. Now you've got to identify the tone of the passage. Once you've read the passage and identified the tone and you have the gist of the passage, you understand what the writer is saying, it's very important to underline question words so you'd know how to answer those questions. For example, typical question words would be why, explain or give reasons, what, identify or explain something, say what it is. And you'll find a range of question words. When, where, to what extent, or if you're asked to quote from the passage, then you use quotation marks, right? You use single inverted commas. The important thing here is to answer in your own words. If you are not asked to quote, then there's no reason to quote. Explain what you understand in your own English. If you're asked to give a synonym, then you've got to understand what the meaning of a synonym is. It means a word that is similar in meaning to the one that is given. So if you're asked to provide a synonym from the passage, you've got to find a word that is similar in meaning from the passage. But if you are not asked to choose a word from the passage, then you can choose your own word. The same goes for antonyms as well. If you are asked to give an antonym, it means that you must give a word meaning the opposite. We all understand that time is a problem, and sometimes you feel quite rushed and quite stressed and pressurized. You've got to keep calm. Time is a problem to many learners. Learners become stressed if they see that time is running out. Below are a few guidelines that you may follow to help you. Preview the passage. Look at the first sentences in every paragraph just to have an idea of what the passage will be about. Next, read the text quickly with a pencil in the hand and underline lines that you think could be important. Read the questions. Look at question words and mark allocation. Read the text very carefully. While doing that, mark possible answers to questions. Begin answering the questions. Mark allocation is very important because it gives you an idea of how much time should be spent on the questions. Far too often do you find many learners writing too much, and sometimes it's off the topic. If you are given a 3-mark question, you should write a minimum of 3 lines and probably add 2 to that, 3 to 5 lines. Learners write paragraphs sometimes, and on certain occasions they miss the point totally and they go off the topic and the answer becomes irrelevant. So, keep your answers precise. Answer questions exactly as are asked. It helps to underline a key phrase or word in the questions when you read through it. A key word might be something like give a reason for. So, when you underline key words, it means that you know exactly how to go about answering that question. When you are asked yes or no, or true or false, you have to answer yes or no first, and then give a reason in order to get marks. If you merely state yes or no and give no reason, you will get no marks for it. Your yes or no must be followed by a valid reason or by valid explanation. The same goes for true or false. If you just simply state true or false as your answer without giving a reason, you will not be credited for it. Please remember that. Also, if you are asked for fact or opinion, firstly say what it is and then give a reason or motivation, and then you will get 2 marks for it. So let's recap that. If you are asked to state yes or no, true or false, or state whether it's a fact or an opinion, you've got to first state that first, whether it's yes, no, true, false, fact, opinion, and support that. Okay, support that with a good reason or good reasons. When you get multiple choice questions, you write only the number and the correct symbol. That's very important for you to remember. It's just the number and the correct symbol or correct answer. And there's the example. 1B or number 2 with the answer only. You don't write the entire sentence out. In order for your work to be neat, it's good to leave a line after each answer. It makes the marking much easier. And the other thing, while I need to tell you, is the quality of your handwriting. It must be legible. When examiners have to read through hundreds of answers on a daily basis, it can become very frustrating. So you need to ensure that the writing is large, it's visible, and it's legible, so that can be understood by the marker. We know that you are in a hurry, you're rushing in order to complete your paper, your answers in 2 hours, but please remember to write legibly. The next point is, when quoting from a text, enclose the quote with single inverted commas. Remember that in order to do well in comprehension, you will need to practice. Ask your teachers for past year exam papers, or you could download them from the internet. Okay, I think that rounds up our discussion on comprehension. And then the next section that we will focus on is the summary. The summary consists of 10 marks. It's question 3 in the exam paper. The summary can be taken from any source. You'll be given an extract, and here you are asked to summarize that passage. Let's look at certain tips that one could use in order to answer this question well. Firstly, you should read the instructions. Make sure you know how many words are expected in your summary and which part of the given passage you must summarize. Just as you've done in your comprehension, you would use some of those techniques here to understand the content of the summary. So let's read through it with a pencil in hand, where you would be able to underline key points as you go along. So what you do is to highlight or underline the main points or ideas. It is usually easier to highlight one main idea per paragraph as a starting point. Remember, you've got to write your summary based on the number of words that is required in the question paper. And you're not allowed to exceed that by too many. And I will explain the penalties to you that markers use when they mark your summaries. Remember, before you hand in your final answer, you've got to do a rough draft first. You can't just go straight into your final answer without doing a rough draft. When you do a rough draft, it gives you an idea of how many words you've used, and sometimes if you use too many, you need to reduce the number of words and suit that to the question. If you're asked to give a title for your summary, you should do so. Here's an example. Your teacher has asked you to deliver a talk in class for oral assessment. You have decided to deliver a talk on how to be popular. So that is it, how to be popular. Read the passage, which is below, and answer and write a list of 7 points. So you need to underline that so you know how many points you're required to write for inclusion in your talk. And there's the extract. It says anyone can be popular. So you've got to understand what it means to be popular using your previous knowledge. And as you read through the passage, you need to underline key words, and you're required to write 7 very important points. So when you're doing so, you will underline the key points. Okay, you look at the quotations, and you will rephrase that in your own words. Remember, it's just like writing comprehension answers, where you've got to rephrase. You've got to rephrase the words that are used in the passage. You've got to put it into your own words. You do the same for the summary. Put everything into your own words. Okay, so you can read through that extract, and it says adapted from Free for All, June 2006. So I think you'll be able to understand the text. It's free for all, is suited to teenagers and young people like you. The question would be, list 7 points. So that's very important for you to note. In full sentences, full sentences. It must not be in point form. When you're doing a draft, you can write in point form. But when you're presenting your final effort, it must be written in full sentences. It says using 60 to 70 words. So keep that in mind as well. Now, you are asked to number, and please do so if you are asked to number. Number your sentences from 1 to 7. The third point here is write only 1 point per sentence. Just 1 point. If you've got 2 points, that can become another sentence. As I've also told you earlier on, use your own words. Examiners need to see that you've understood the passage, so you need to use your own words. Also at the end, you've got to indicate the total number of words you have used in brackets at the end of your summary. That is essential. You must present your summary in the required format. If you're asked to number it from numbers 1 to 7, that's how you should do it. The next point here is that you must indicate your word count correctly. If the examiner feels that you have not indicated your word count correctly, he will deduct marks, okay? So please ensure that you're honest and that you're accurate as well in the number of words that you've used. Now, what I'm going to show you now is how examiners actually mark your effort and how you lose marks for for certain areas. For example, marks are awarded as follows. You are given 7 marks for 7 points. So if you got all your points written, if these points are relevant, and if they're in your own words, you'll get 7 marks. Okay? Then the other 3 marks, that's for language. Here you are given 3 marks for that. And when you make mistakes, it means your marks are deducted according to the number of mistakes or the number of errors that you make. So you've got to be you've got to be precise with your language. Your spelling must be correct, your punctuation as well, the expression, and all other language devices must be correct as well. Here are the penalties. This is how you lose marks. I'll go through this. It says, if the summary has not been presented in the required format, the candidate should be penalized by deducting 1 mark from the total mark awarded. So you lose 1 mark if you have not written it in the correct format that was required. Now, if you quote directly from the passage without restating this into your own words, you will lose lots of marks here as well. So you'll be penalized as follows by deducting from the total mark awarded for the points and language usage. This is it. If you quote 1 to 3 entire sentences or whole sentences, there's no penalty. So there, you're given some leeway. However, if you quote between 4 to 5 whole sentences, 1 mark is subtracted. If you quote 6 to 7 whole sentences, then you would lose 2 marks. For summaries that are too long, the marker would only read up to 5 words beyond the required length and ignore the rest of the answer. Now what this simply means is that if you've written more than the number of words that were required, and the most important points are towards the end of your answer, unfortunately, you will not be credited for it because that will be struck off. So the point I'm making here is that it is absolutely essential for you to stick to the number of words that's required. Be precise, be accurate, rephrase quotations into your own words. Make sure it's cohesive, it becomes meaningful. Write it in according to the numbers that was required. And let's look at the language errors. Here again, you lose marks because of the errors that you make when it comes to language. And here we're talking about spelling, punctuation, and all the other language errors that you might make. If there's between 0 and 4 errors, no penalty, there's no penalty. But if it's between 5 and 10 errors, 1 mark would be subtracted. If it's between 11 and 15 errors, then 2 marks would be subtracted. And if it's 16 errors or more, I hope nobody is going to be in that category, 3 marks would be subtracted. So it simply means you get 0 for the language aspect. So please make sure that your language is absolutely correct. Now, what if you don't write the number of words that you've used? Or if you write the incorrect number? Here again, 1 mark will be subtracted. An important thing to note is the use of abbreviations. If you use abbreviations, firstly you should not, but if you do, it's going to be counted as words. So don't think that they will be counted as just alphabets, but they'll be regarded as full, complete words and will be added to your word count at the end. So the point here is refrain from using abbreviations. So that's the summary. Now we'll go on to the language section. Let's look at how the questions are devised and the type of questions that you could expect when it comes to language. Language questions are based on a text or several short texts. Questions will be on language used in a particular context. You will not be tested on your knowledge of language terms, but on your ability to apply your knowledge. Now what that simply means is that you won't be asked for definitions of words like what is a synonym, define a homonym or a homophone, but rather you'll be asked to identify this in a particular passage or in a sentence. Always make sure that you know where the text comes from. For example, if it's a dialogue, a diary entry, a recipe, a newspaper extract, an advertisement, a book cover, and many more. We look at visual texts. A visual text will always be included. It might be a bar graph, a table, a cartoon, an advertisement, or any other picture-based piece of information. Always look at the mark allocation. Please ensure that you give one answer only. Do not leave the marker with choices. Okay? So you write down what answer you think would be correct, but don't leave the marker with various choices. That's going to be struck off. Never write two answers and think the marker will select the correct one. Markers mark the first answer that is given. When it comes to language as well, you need to remember that the better your general knowledge and vocabulary, the better you will perform. It helps to read newspapers and study cartoons and various advertisements throughout the year. And if you've not done so, it's not too late. Read the newspapers, okay? Look at the cartoons, analyze the advertisements, okay? And I'll give you some hints and tips on how you should be able to analyze that. Study all the notes you have on visual literacy, language and editing, common errors, dictionary work, punctuation, where and when to use the apostrophe, plurals, passive and active voice, direct and indirect speech, the close exercises and tenses. So the next question that we need to focus on is on cartoon analysis. Now this is a very interesting section because many of you are familiar with cartoons. However, there are many questions, key questions that are based on the different aspects of cartoons. This is what we are going to focus on right now. What do you look for when you analyze a cartoon? The first thing you do is you look for body language of characters. How do they use their bodies to convey a certain message? Nonverbal, this is what we call nonverbal communication. Now, a cartoon is still, okay? It's unlike the cartoons that you find on television where there's action. So you've got to figure out many things that's not present. Okay, it's quite easy when you watch this on television. There you can focus on action, you can focus on mood, you can focus on body language, and the actual words and the tone and the manner in which it is spoken. But when it comes to the cartoons in the exam paper, you'll find that it's totally different. So now we need to figure out ways in which we can analyze that cartoon. So the first thing is the body language. What does the body language say about the cartoon characters, about their actions, about their thoughts, about their feelings as well? Besides the body language, there are other aspects that we'll focus on as well. The other thing is gestures. This refers to the movement of one's hands. Okay, people move their hands in different ways, and this means different things to different people. So we've got to look at the gestures. What about facial expression? How do they look? Do they look sad? Do they look happy, irritated? You will be able to identify this when you look at the cartoons. What about what they say? This is what we call verbal communication. What do the characters actually say? What about the tone of voice? Now this is something you can't hear because it is on paper, unlike in a television program. We can actually hear how people say certain things, and you'll be able to identify the tone. So here you've got to figure out the tone as well. What about the setting? Let's look at the setting. Where is this cartoon set? In what location? Where is it located? What about the scale? Let's look at the size of characters. Sometimes one character is much bigger than the other. And in most cases, you'll find that there's lots of exaggeration. What about stereotypes and caricatures? I'm going to focus in greater detail on what stereotypes are and what caricatures are by providing with some examples. Some of the key aspects about cartoon analysis, things to look for here, are speech bubbles and thought bubbles. Now, the speech bubbles are the actual words that are used by the characters, by the cartoon characters. And the thought bubbles refers to the thoughts of characters. And here you will find different symbols to represent that as well. The little bubbles that you find there are what we call the speech bubbles. Now, you need to look at the font size as well, the size of the print. And that reflects the mood of some of those cartoon characters. It reflects their feelings as well. Sometimes you'll find that words are written in very bold, very large print. This could refer to different emotions. It could be that the person is ecstatic or enthusiastic or excited, or sometimes very irritated and very angry as well. So the font size could reflect the feelings of the cartoon characters. Cartoons are normally a drawing sequence. It's a drawing or a sequence of drawings, usually showing a humorous situation. You'll find that there's a little story that is being narrated in these cartoons. Cartoons are normally accompanied by what we call a caption, or words at the bottom. It's like a title. It tells you what the cartoon is about. Other types of cartoons will try to convey a political message. And you find lots of political messages in cartoons in the daily newspapers. By using caricature or satire. As I said, I'm going to focus on caricature in a short while. Let's look at this cartoon here as an example. All right, you'll find the two characters. And as I said, you've got to focus on the body language. You look at the facial expressions. So here, if you look at the facial expression of that person, you can see he's actually very happy. Okay, you can see it from his smile. His body language, sitting upright, looking very confident about himself. Here you will find the other person. His mouth is wide open, and that would actually show you an element of surprise in the way in which he expresses himself. What is going on here? So we've got a character who sent his CV to the boss, but he says, I'm the boss's son. So the humor, you've got to identify the humor in the extract, in the cartoon. I like the way you've kept your CV short and to the point. Now that's mocking the idea of CVs. Okay, CVs are supposed to be short and to the point, but not to this extent where it states, I'm the boss's son. Let's go on to the next one. What is caricature? A caricature is a drawing that exaggerates or distorts or to make bigger and make funny a person or a thing to create humor or to get a message across. It often serves a political purpose, or it is used to convey a stereotype. Let me focus on an example, okay? This is a common example of people that are very, very famous, and cartoons or cartoonists thrive on this, okay, to represent or present characters. However, you will find this is a famous person in our country. That's Bishop Tutu. That's the photograph. But if you look at the difference in the drawing, you'll find that there are huge differences, okay? You'll find his glasses much bigger. His nose as well has been exaggerated. The size of his mouth. Basically everything about him is exaggerated. Now this is what we call a caricature. It is not the actual representation of someone, but rather something that is exaggerated about them. Another example, Bill Clinton. Okay, he's a previous president of the United States. So what is being caricatured here as well? You will see his chin, his face as well, his nose, his hair. And then Tony Blair is renowned for his for smiling a lot. And here you will see his ears are exaggerated as well as the size of his teeth. Stereotypes are often based on people's prejudice or ideas that they normally don't have proof of. For example, all lawyers tend to be deceitful or devious is a stereotype. A stereotype is a preconceived idea. It's a general feeling, but not necessarily true. You can think of other stereotypes that you've come across as well. When you look at cartoons, you've got to look at motion lines, and you've got to look at frames. So there are two concepts. One is the motion lines, because that motion lines is also known as movement lines, okay? Because it is still, a cartoon is still, you've got to try and figure out what the action really is, or what kind of movement was the cartoonist trying to convey. Was the person walking in a very leisurely, relaxed way, or was he hurrying? So you'll find movement lines which would indicate either the speed, or was a person walking in a very leisurely, relaxed manner. That will be reflected in the cartoon as well. What about frames? We didn't talk about frames. Cartoons are normally divided into frames, like picture frames. So when you are asked questions on cartoons, you're asked to refer to a particular frame. For example, you will be asked to refer to frame 1 or refer to frame 2. So you've got to be able to identify these frames when it comes to cartoons and the questions. Here's an example. Here's an example, okay? There, for example, that would be a frame. Frame 1 and frame 2. You'll find that there are some movement lines. And you will see perspiration seems to be indicated. And that would reflect something about him. Look at his facial expression. Seems to be showing us some sort of irritation, some sort of frustration. So that'll bring out his feelings. Look at the setting where he is, and he's actually trying to open the door, but it seems to be stuck. What about frame 2? What happens? You'll see he falls, and these lines here would be the movement lines. It would indicate the speed at which he had fallen. When you look at visual literacy, we look at emotive language. Emotive language refers to language that appeals to one's feelings. Why do we use emotive language? We use emotive language for different reasons, for different purposes. Think of politicians, for example, when they're trying to woo supporters for their votes. They would appeal to their emotions, to their feelings, to encourage them to vote, because they would present a picture that they are trying, that they would go all out to have their, because they have their best interests at heart, and they would do everything in their power to make sure that they assist them. So, politicians also use emotive language to influence people, and that's the key aspect here. It is to influence people to vote for them or to accept their policies. We all try to persuade people. It is persuasive language that is used. When we want people to do something that we would like them to do, we use emotive or persuasive language. So you've got to be very, very careful about persuasive language and try and figure out the intentions of people when they speak to you, when they try to convince you about something. What about advertisers? Yes, and salespeople as well. They use emotive language to great effect, because they want to motivate you to buy the product or service. That is it. Advertisers want to motivate you to buy their product, and so they will appeal to you to make it seem like they are there to help you. Okay, you've got to look at the deeper meaning as well. When it comes to emotive language, a common word that is used is bias. When you are subjective, that is, influenced by emotions, you may become biased, that is, have an unfair opinion about someone that affects the way you treat them. Bias is deliberate, irrational conviction not based on evidence. Another word for bias is prejudice, and it leads to what we call stereotyping. We are going to look at a few advertisements and try and analyze these as advertisements and look at the intentions of advertisers. What is the goal of advertising? The goal of advertising is to convince the public to buy a product or support a certain company or service. And they do this in various ways. In magazines, newspapers, when you go to the movies as well, you'll find that there are lots of advertisements on television. There are plenty of many different ways in which advertisers try to get the message across to sell the products. So how do they get you? How do they persuade the unsuspecting person to get interested in the products? They use different techniques, different tactics as well, which we're going to focus on. The first one is visual techniques, is what you see, something that is very colorful, that will attract your attention, that will appeal to you, and something that you can't miss. You'll find these very large billboards all around the city, and they are there to attract your attention. Also, they're very colorful, and sometimes you get very romantic or beautiful photographs. You get different fonts. Here they're very creative in using a multitude of different types of print styles, and that would attract your attention as well. Exclamation marks are there to attract your attention. So is large print, diagrams, tables, and quite often you're presented with statistics. For example, 9 out of 10 doctors use a certain product, so it's good for you. Now you've got to question that. Did they really do research to find out that 9 out of 10 doctors use a particular product? Be careful. Look at that. It's there merely to impress you. You'll find that many advertisers are creative. They would use a very unusual layout to attract your attention. Also in terms of shapes and lines that they use, these would be very interesting. Now that they've got your attention, they would like you to read the advertisement. And so they use many linguistic techniques. Linguistic refers to the use of language. This is the skillful use of language to keep you interested so that you would read the advertisement right till the very end. So how do they do that? And there many other techniques or tactics are used. The first one is assertions. Assertion simply means words that convince people that buying this product will give them a healthier life or a better lifestyle or a better image. They play on your needs. They know what you need, and so they would try and create products that would work on that need. The language that they use could be humorous or funny language, like creating new words so that these words would stick in your minds. Language is very emotive. As we mentioned, emotive language appeals to your feelings. That will stir up emotions of the reader, like this is a wonder product, or it's scientifically proven, or it's real, 100% pure, it's new, it's better, all natural, guaranteed results, etc. So you'll find these phrases very often, that these phrases are used in advertisements to influence you, to persuade you, to motivate you to buy a particular product. The headlines are there that are used can be very interesting, and that would stimulate your interest in the product as well, so you'd want to read on. Puns. Puns refer to wordplay. It's a play on words for humorous effect, and this would remain in your memory. Repetition. Yes, to emphasize certain points. Repetition is used constantly. Then rhetorical questions. Rhetorical questions refers to questions that do not require answers. Okay, so the intention is to grab the attention of the reader. Slogans as well. Many short slogans are used so that you would remember this very often. Let's look at the target groups. Advertisers target certain products to certain groups of people. So not every advertisement would appeal to everyone. Let's look at who they would target. So the target groups would refer to who is the advertisement aimed at? Who is it directed at? Who would be interested in such an advertisement? What group or type of person? Here we're referring to people of different ages, for example. We refer to children, teenagers, adults, okay? Or someone who's very wealthy would be able to afford something very expensive. So here are some of the target groups that advertisements would be aimed at. For example, car lovers, or computer addicts, or DVD and PlayStation lovers, health-conscious people, energetic shoppers, people who like traveling, gamblers, and many more. You'll find you can add to this list. So what are the human desires that they would appeal to? We all have human desires. We all like to be, or like to emulate other people. We like to be like others. So, the first one there is to be like other people. So, how can you be like other people? For example, to be like famous people. What can you do? What products can you buy in order to be or live like some people who are famous? The next one is to have the latest technology. Okay, most people have the strong desire to keep up with the latest trends in technology. And so that advertisements for cellular products, for example, would appeal to you. To have the latest and most expensive new products like cars. Okay, if you're fashion conscious, if you are wealthy, you'd be able to buy the latest cars. Or to be healthy. I think most people have this need to be healthy, and there are many products on the market which would cater for this desire. To save money. Yes, many people would like to save money. So many advertisements would actually try to exploit this desire in all of us to save money. Or to be a family person, and many, many more. Okay, here's an example of an advertisement. We will analyze this advertisement. Now, there's a picture that would attract your attention. And you've got to ask yourself, how does the advertiser attract the attention of the reader? Firstly, you look at the picture. It's a very large picture. It's a picture of someone who's very beautiful as well. Advertisers play on that desire of human beings to look presentable in public. Everybody has got the desire to look good in the presence of others. So this is exploited in us. There you'll find that she's very happy. Okay, she's smiling. She's got long flowing hair. Okay, and there's a product. Then we're introduced to the product itself, and then it's called organics. So there, what has attracted our attention? One, it's a picture. Two, the use of color. You'll see the green. What about the fonts, the font sizes? You'll find that there's a variation in the font sizes as well. And there are different fonts that are used to attract our attention. And then we're presented with the product, which is a shampoo. So what the advertiser wants us to do is to look at the link between a beautiful girl and the product that she uses. So that's the first thing. Our attention is attracted, and he needs to maintain our interest in that by providing us with slogans. Okay, natural nourishment from root to tip for healthy hair that shines. You also find the use of the clever use of language here, the use of alliteration, the repetition of the H sounds, healthy hair. Okay, that would actually stick in your mind. It would play in your mind as well. So that's clever use of linguistic devices. So that technique is used. And the word itself, the name of the product, organics. Organics. So you've got to look at the word and the significance of the name of a product as well. Organic suggests something organic, something natural. So the advertiser is suggesting that there are no artificial ingredients that are used in the product. And if we use something that is organic, something natural, we would enhance our looks. Okay, so that's the first advertisement. Let's go on to another type of advertisement. And there, the advertiser is exploiting our need to protect our loved ones. Now, this is something that is natural. We all have this desire to protect the people that we love. So, the advertiser knows that. And so he would focus on finding products that he could sell to us in order to show that we actually love the ones that, and we'd like to protect the ones that we love. Although, you and I know that this comes naturally. However, in order to show that you actually love someone more, the advertiser says you can buy products and show them that you actually care about them. And if you look at this picture, it's a picture of a beautiful baby. And if you look at a picture of a beautiful baby, it would attract your attention immediately because most of us are drawn towards children. And there we have a picture of a child. It says, give your child the broadest protection possible. Now, isn't that an interesting way of starting this advertisement, where we all know that we need to protect children. And so the product here, it says, prevent 13. One child dies every minute from pneumococcal disease. Now that's frightening. It's there to shock us. Straight away, the advertiser has shocked us. He says, one child dies every minute. So there he's appealing to our feelings of showing love and care and protecting the ones that we love once again. So here's a product. He's actually suggesting that we vaccinate the child in order to prevent certain diseases. Okay, so here again, we look at it. He has attracted our attention by using a picture, a colorful picture as well. So the use of color is important. The use of different fonts as well. Look at prevent. Okay, so different fonts are used. The picture is used, and then there's lots of information written in very fine print that we would need to read. Let's look at another advertisement. Okay, hopefully it's something that you are able to recognize. Okay, it's been winter. We've just come out of winter, and this has been a very popular product, soup. Now, the advertiser decided to make this funny and something that we would remember, because there are various soups on the market, and the advertiser has to make his sound different to the other products that are available. So he tried to make the advertisement humorous. So the humor appeal addresses our need to laugh and thereby makes a positive association with the product. You can think of advertisements that make use of humor. And these advertisements would remain in your mind for a longer period of time, rather than advertisements that are totally serious. So the advertisers know that we have a need or a desire to laugh. And so he would create an advert that would be funny, okay, but also at the same time that would remain in our memories, okay, and so that we would be able to buy products based on that. Here again, what attracts the attention of the reader? You are asked a question. That's a typical exam question. What techniques are used to attract the attention of the reader? And if you look at it here, you look at the font again, you focus on the font. Okay, it's a large font, it's unusual as well. It's very creative. If you look at the exclamation mark, that also attracts your attention. And goodness on the go. That's interesting, because people are always in a hurry. They're always in a hurry, and it doesn't seem as if they've got sufficient time to eat healthy food. So the advertiser is actually saying that you don't have to stay at home to have healthy food. You can even have it while you are traveling, or while you're at work, or while you're on your way to work as well. It's very simple to have. Now, what is this product? It says it's Cup of Soup Go, and it's a picture of a large cup or bowl, as you can see, and that also would attract one's attention. The color, use of color, bright colors as well, and the name of the product at the end. And this product is called New Handy Single Pack. It's new. That also would create some interest in the reader as to why, what is it about this new product? I'd like to try it, to give it a try. Let's look at some of the tips that one should use when you analyze advertisements. Here, very simply, you need to use what we call the AIDA principle, AIDA. So let's look at what the AIDA stands for. It says the AIDA principle says that a good advertisement must have 4 features. What are these 4 features? Firstly, A stands for attention. Advertisement should grab the reader's attention, and we've mentioned many ways that advertisers use in order to grab your attention. The second one is to maintain your interest. How do they maintain your interest in that product? The interest of the reader needs to be held long enough to read the advertisement. So advertisements should be precise, should be short, to the point. Advertisements that are too long sometimes can be very tedious. So advertisers try to keep the advertisements very, very short, to the point, and they use very interesting linguistic devices in order to maintain your interest. The third thing, the D, stands for desire. The advertiser wants the reader to have a desire for the product. In other words, he will want you to feel that you need a particular product. The final point here is the A, which stands for action. The advertiser wants the reader to take action and order or buy the product. So let's go over that again. The A stands for attention, to grab your attention. The I is to maintain your interest in the advertisement or in the product. The D is to create a desire and need in you. And A is the desired action. And when they ask you to buy a product, they normally provide you with certain contact details as to where the product can be purchased. Probably an address or a telephone number, or an email address, so that you can contact them to buy this product, or in which stores a particular product is available. The final section here in this paper is what we call editing skills. Now this tests you on a wide range of language skills that you've learnt from primary school. So all the sections that you've studied in language will obviously assist you now. So you've got to try and remember and focus on all the language sections that you've studied. Now, here you can be asked a wide range of questions. You're given a passage and you're asked, many various types of questions. Sometimes you'll find that there are deliberate errors in the passage. It's not that the examiners could not spell, but it's there to test whether you were able to identify these errors. So these errors are left there deliberately for you to identify and to correct. So you've got to correct the errors, probably a spelling error, or a concord error, or an expression error, or a tense error. Then your parts of speech, and you've studied parts of speech for many years. You've got to go over all those parts of speech that you've studied, because sometimes you're asked to identify the part of speech of a particular word. Then you need to convert words from singular to plural, or to convert a sentence from direct to indirect speech. So there you've got to know all the rules that you need to apply to convert direct to indirect speech. It is quite a lengthy section. However, you've got to study the rules carefully in order to complete the section well. Active and passive voice. Here again, go through the rules for active and passive voice. So now that we've completed our task of discussing the most important aspects of paper 1, which is comprehension and language, I would like to leave you with some further thoughts and give you some advice on how you should be able to tackle this paper. When it comes to comprehension, please remember that you need to rephrase all the paragraphs and sentences into your understanding, into your own words, so that you will be able to be credited, with total marks. Please do not leave out any answers. You must attempt every answer. There should be no blanks. So the moment that you leave a blank, it means that you've left yourself with no chance of getting any marks. So you have to ensure that you attempt an answer. Please remember that when preparing for your language section, you need to study like you study for other subjects. It is not a subject or an aspect that you should take for granted, because there are marks to be scored, and you can score these marks if you know your rules of grammar, your punctuation, your concord, your active and passive voice. I urge you to go through these sections in great detail, and don't take these sections for granted. There are marks to be scored, and you should be able to grab them with both arms. Please look at past year papers. Examiners normally base the questions on past year papers, and you'll find that the pattern is quite similar as well. So once you go through these past year papers, when you answer your final exam paper, it would not be unfamiliar to you. You'll feel as if you've done something like this before. So I would urge you to ensure that you go through as many past year papers as possible. Even try answering them under exam conditions. Time yourself. That would give you sufficient practice. When you time yourself, you will know that you've got 2 hours to complete the paper, okay, and that you should not exceed that time limit. Far too often do learners spend too much of time on the comprehension, okay, and as a result, many questions that are very easy to answer, especially on the editing section, those questions are left unanswered. So it is in your best interest to pace yourself. Please pace yourself. Spend sufficient time on the comprehension and then ensure that you answer every other question on language, because as I mentioned just now, the question 5, which is the editing question, is a question where you can score marks much easier than in the comprehension. So ensure that you complete that. Do not leave blanks, because we've seen from the past that many learners leave out many answers which are much easier to answer.